Michael with United Veterans Worldwide, excited today to meet with Haley and Bob, and I've come in contact with them actually through a post that I did maybe a month or two ago, and one of Haley's relatives saw the post and made mention that we should have a discussion, and Haley and I had a good chat one day, and she introduced me to her husband's story briefly, and I was just really eager to have this global audience meet them. So maybe you guys can take a couple of minutes here and introduce yourselves officially for who you are.
Sure. I'm Haley. We live in Utah. We've got 5, almost 6 kids, and I joined the Army back in Army National Guard in aviation in '99. And served until 2007 when I was expecting my first baby, and got out then, did 1 deployment to Afghanistan.
I'm Bob Jensen. I joined the Army Reserves and Civil Affairs in 2004. I was in there for 14 years. I had 1 deployment, and Adam Bagley, who you had on a few weeks ago, that's my cousin.
Oh, that's your cousin. Gotcha.
Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah. Well, I love the fact that you were in civil affairs, another brother. So we had the best mission sets. We had some of the best people.
Yeah, we had it pretty good in places where people didn't know what to do with us. As long as the XO or someone knew what to do with us, we had a really good time. Because he just give us his letter and we could do whatever we wanted,
Yep.
Give us his blessing. We could go do our job, and the rest of the infantry really didn't know what to do with us. But it really that left us effective to go do what we needed to do.
Yeah, tied to an infantry unit would be tough. I think when I was in Iraq as an infantry, we had a civil affairs team attached to us, and they did some amazing things. It was led by a female captain, and she and her team did some amazing work with women's groups and schools, and it was pretty heroic. But yeah, infantry doesn't understand the mission of civil affairs, and so when I went to Africa, I wasn't attached to infantry at all. We were just our own unit, small team, and we were able to do amazing things that changed my life in so many ways, positive ways. So a great, incredible mission set. So Haley, let's go back to you for a second and go back in time. Why join the military?
That was kind of funny for me. I just had family in the military. I had an uncle who was a battalion commander at a time, and his daughter joined, and she asked me, why don't you think about it? And I'd never thought about it before, so looked into it. Looked like something to do at the time, so I just joined in aviation. I really enjoyed aviation, so yeah.
Aviation is complex, a lot of moving parts. Are you guys still there?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I've interviewed recently another guy who was in aviation for 20 years at the Marine Corps, and he said there was a lot of sitting around and then a lot of immediate action and then back to sitting around, and sometimes that plays its own torturous role on people.
Yeah.
So tell me about Afghanistan for you. Where were you and what did you do?
Yeah, so I did flight operations in the TOC, the Technical Operations Center in Bagram, for a battalion of Apaches and Blackhawks and Chinooks, and a couple of fixed wings that were with us. The total deployment was about 16 months. Those were the early days when we had to go to Fort Carson for like 4 months while they figured out how to work us into the rotation and get us trained up. So, I spent a lot of time on Bagram. In the free time, there's not much to do other than work out or go fly jump seat. So, did a little of flying around. There wasn't a lot that happened on the base, but it's still a dark experience. Just seeing the reality of how people live there and what they're subjected to. That was really hard. And we had crashes, and we lost crew members, and we had suicide, and had some tough things. So, those things were tough, but for the most part, I was on base and I was safe and surrounded by a lot of good people. So,
Yeah, and I can understand that. But I don't want to take away from the experience of when you say it's on base, because deployment is deployment. You're away, and I think, like we talked, there's always an unknown. While you guys had some pretty advanced systems, kind of like we did in Iraq, where if missiles were shot at our big bases, they would take them out, whatever, but you would still hear it. You'd still hear the sounds, and experiencing deaths in a combat environment is always a challenge. And for my aviation brothers and sisters out there, it's probably way too common for accidents, and that's a hard hit for a unit, especially when you talk about the skills that are required to work in an aviation unit. It's not easily replaceable. And not to say that infantry are expendable, but it's a different scenario.
yeah.
And the suicide you experienced, was that out of your unit that was there as well?
Yeah, it was.
What was the story of that individual?
He was middle-aged, single guy. he was a maintenance guy, just having a hard time. And I remember having a conversation with him one day, and he was just saying, I don't know what to do. I can't take it anymore. It's just so hard, and what do you do in that kind of environment? Or what do you do?
Yeah.
You just try to get support, you try to listen, and then a few days later he was gone.
Yeah, I think that was the first scenario where I walked into dealing with soldier suicide was in Iraq. A guy actually right outside of the chow hall went into one of the little portos and killed himself. I was probably 100 meters away when I heard the shot, so I thought, something on the base got overrun or something, or a negligent discharge or something. But yeah, it was a lonely soldier who just felt like there was no other way out. And unfortunately, maybe it's the same for you guys too, but so many more have occurred afterwards that just makes no sense. And it's so sad that they felt like there was no hope. Yeah, great. Well, thank you for your service, Haley, and I don't ever want to downplay it when people say they've just been on base, because that's a whole different world for anybody who's a civilian paying attention and watching today. It's really hard to put into words that it can be dark, right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Bob, tell me about your experience in your deployment.
Yeah, just to go along with what you said about being on base, I think Disney, that's the main drive there at Bagram. That was the worst road in the entire country. I thought I hated that road, but being in there and it was just easier to be out on the fob and be left to do what you want to do. But I joined enlisted after I graduated from college because I didn't have any good leadership there, to tell me what to do. I thought that's what I wanted to do, and went into civil affairs and went training there at Bragg.
Yeah,
with guys there. And when I got out of training there, they gave us an opportunity to do some language training. So I went in and did some language training there at the JFK school with all the special forces guys around me, and we were in there with active duty CA guys, and the school that we go to is joint. This USA K-POC school is joint there with PSYOP also, and so a bunch of those guys, and really enjoyed working with those guys too. Got out of language school, came home, was deployed. By then we had 2 kids. So when Haley first deployed, we were married, but we didn't have any kids, and so she went for a year, and I stayed home and finished college. And then when I deployed, we had 2 little girls, and I'll tell you what, it's much harder being home during a deployment with your spouse gone than being gone.
Good point.
You take all the boredom and all the terror that goes along with combat, and that's horrible. when you're at home and everything's the same around you except the key ingredients are gone, it's very difficult. It's very depressing. It's very lonely. I remember there was one day when I was on the phone with her, and I could hear the explosions in the background, and it scared me. And my grades went just after she still graduated, but they went right downhill. It's not good for me, and I having been in both places, I can't give enough credit, enough support to the spouses who are home. It is it's horrible.
Yeah, and I appreciate you walking us into that discussion point, because without a doubt, spouses are the underseen, underheard side of conflict. And when I deployed to Iraq, I had 2 daughters at home with my spouse, and my third, my son, was born 3 weeks after I left. My commander wouldn't let me stay behind, so I got on the call while I was in a little phone area. You know, I don't even remember what we called that thing, but there were like 18 phones lined up, and you just kind of sit next to somebody you don't know and trying to listen to the sounds of my baby. You know, yeah, it was tough, and but my wife where were we living? Oh, we were at Fort Riley. My wife was surrounded by other people who were also spouses who were also deployed. And so it created a family unit where all of those ladies just bound together. And for Guard and reservists, they don't get that same type of camaraderie that they would have gotten on an active duty base, where you're just kind of trapped with these people and they all know what you're going through. And so I have the utmost of respect for Guard and reserves who deploy or who take the role of the parent at home with the children. Yeah, my hat's off to you guys. What a challenge. So, Bob, walk us through a little bit more of your story.
So we deployed to Afghanistan, and we were attached. My little group was had a team. I go back. Civil Affairs usually deploys. They're different. They can be pulled into a PRT,
Provincial Reconstruction Team, right?
Right, which I think would be your own personal hell, just right there. I would never want to be in one of them. Or you could be attached to an infantry battalion. And we were attached to the 212th of the 4th Infantry Division. And we were put in Kunar province at Fob Blessing. And that is the area that engulfed the Pesh River Valley. And where Red Wing, where the story of Red Wing happened, that was there. Up in the Korengal, in that area. Very, very dangerous, very active area. When we first got there, the very first day, we were doing I can't remember all my terminology, military terminology, but when you're doing the swap over with the team before, and they were just telling a story about what was going to happen. And my team was a captain, my team sergeant, who had already had 2 prior deployments. He was active duty. He was with the Big Red One, with the Abrams. He was very good with weapon systems.
What was his name?
His name was Greenwood, Justin Greenwood.
Okay. Yeah, I was Big Red One.
Hey, what?
I was 1st Infantry Division. Yeah.
Were you?
Yeah.
It was really good because he knew his weapon system so well. I mean, he just, because as reservists, you know them, but not like the active duty guys. I'll be the first to say that I was not an active duty guy. I was a reservist. And we did the best we could, but it's not the same.
No.
And so we had him as a team sergeant, and then there was me, and then we had another guy with us whose name is Kevin Forsyth, who had gone through everything for selection, had gone through all the training for a medic as a Green Beret medic. But when Robin Sage came up, I don't know, they didn't want him anymore. he failed the PT test. I know that when they're going through language schools and things, that happens to a lot of guys. They just kind of give up. It's how it is there.
Yep.
There's a lot of times there's no accountability or anything, and so the guys just stopped exercising and doing things. And so he failed that. And if they wanted him, they would have given him a retry and let him go. But they didn't. So anyways, he came over to civil affairs, and he was an excellent medic. It was really good to have him there with us. So we deployed to I forgot where I was going now with my story. I'm sorry. Where was I going with that?
Yeah,
telling you about
you were just talking about the guys who were on your team, but I wanted to just mention, like, that's the reason I have such great respect for you, for reservists and guard, is that you are undertrained, you are under-resourced, and you're still expected to keep the same mission standards and mission set, and that is a challenge. And I probably saw more combat-related deaths with reservists and guard units coming in who had 6 to 8 week train up, whereas active duty, we'd spent the last 2 years resource training, constantly in the field, right at gunnery, whatever.
I'll tell you a quick story. This pretty much sums it up for reservists being there. I remember where I was going with my story, though, with Kunar. Very first day, right seat, left seat. We walked outside the front gate, and all we had on was a sidearm. Because civil affairs, we were allowed to walk around with just a sidearm, with an M9, which I don't know why. Everybody else had to have their M4. We just had a 9mm on us. And we walked outside that front gate, and a rocket came in. It landed probably about 60 feet away from us. It was day one. And me and Forsyth, who had never been in combat, just looking around at each other like, what in the world had just happened? We turned around to see our team sergeant, who had been in combat, been in, two prior deployments, just running back towards the gate. He didn't bother grabbing us or getting us or anything. He was, because you know how it is. This is muscle memory.
Yeah.
You learn later, it's just muscle memory. It's like, I'm getting out of here.
Yeah.
He just took off back to the gate. And as soon as we saw what was going on, we were running too. But that was our welcome to Kunar. The Kunar province was right there with a. But
that was day one?
Whoever was in a say that again?
That was day one?
That was day one, right?
Oh, that's rough.
And then my first time that we actually took action or took contact, when we were in a truck, we're in a convoy, and I was on the gun. I think at this point we had a 50 cal up there, and I heard it open up in the canyon, and I saw something puff on the road in front of me, and I was like, "What in the world is that?" And then it all starts going in. Oh, that's we're taking fire. Those are the rounds hitting the ground in front of us. And so everybody down the truck below me and everybody in the headsets yelling at me, "Fire, fire, fire back!" And I'm like, "Fire what?" I don't know what.
Where?
There's nothing. And because they're not out in the open. Because if they show themselves, they're dead right away. And so finally, just out of frustration, not knowing what to do because they were yelling at me to fire, I pulled the butterfly down on the 50 cal and popped some rounds off there. And what is it? Every fourth round is a tracer. Every
fourth, fifth, yeah, something like that. Yeah.
But yeah, I just watched about 3 tracers just sail over the mountain. I did one of those deals where I went, I think from now on I will aim when I pull the trigger. And everybody else is so busy. I don't think they knew. I didn't think they even knew what was going on. But I looked at the guys in the trucks ahead and behind me like, all right, I'm just a dumb reservist. I'm sorry. As of right here, I am no longer. I will follow the lead. And most of the guys there in the 4th ID, in the 212 to the 4th ID, they were really good. Most of the infantry and most of their lieutenants. One of the lieutenants that I ran into out there actually went to Utah State. I recognized him from my college years.
Wow.
He'd gone there and then transferred to the Army Academy. Well, I can't remember what it's called.
West Point. Mm-hmm.
West Point. Yeah, he got into West Point to finish up. And a lot of the guys there were from West Point. And those infantry lieutenants, they were good.
Yeah.
The ones who had a command, they were good, and the captains over there, they were really good too. I can't really say enough good about those guys, Gator Company and other companies there. They were really good to us. They protected us.
Yeah.
And I also can't say enough good about the aviation, Army aviation. Every time we had aviation, we didn't take contact. We never did. When they'd have to go offline to go to fuel up or do something, oh man, it was just one of these things.
Yep.
Wait for something to happen, So I loved them. I love those guys, and they show up. It's just like a lot of stress would just come right off you. So, but I got a little piece of shrapnel on my shoulder. We found later on. We had a lot of close calls, and had a few times with people not very far away from us. They were killed. I had a few instances where kids were in the middle of firefights and had to watch them try to run for it. I know we wouldn't open them a firefight if there were kids in the way, but they sure would open up a firefight, and we would if there were kids in the way. They didn't care.
No.
And I saw some horrible things, and also saw some good things. So
Yeah.
and just like everybody else, get to deal with our own little nightmares in our own whatever way we can, and just try to keep trying to keep moving forward, keep the nightmares at bay, and try to remember that we're not that person. That's just something I did for a while. I did it because I was asked to do it. If I was asked to do it, I'd do it again. But that's not who I am. That's what I do because I love my country and I love the American people. But when I'm back home, you got to go back into being who you actually are. Most of our veterans are people who care about other people,
Mm-hmm.
and try to help wherever we can in our church callings or our community callings or whatever we want to do with our families, and try to keep everything else just try to keep it at bay. But it sneaks up on you sometimes, and I don't care who you are. It sneaks up on you and hits you. You don't expect it to hit you.
Yeah. Yeah. What year was your deployment to Afghanistan, Bob?
2010.
So, Haley, you were 2004, was it, or 5?
I was 0405.
Okay.
And I think you were 0910.
9-10, that's right, 9-10.
Okay. Yeah, that's where that was a hairy time for both of you guys to be in those places. I never deployed to Afghanistan. I did an Iraq combat deployment and then multiple deployments in Africa in different places. But I always wondered, watching some of the videos of guys in the Korengal Valley, looking up in these mountains and taking fire from someplace, and these guys are just like shooting into dirt up ahead, and I'm like, can they even see? It's a totally different terrain environment than what I fought in, where it was urban and we knew where someone was, sending rounds from.
A lot of times we would just start firing. We thought they were at, or we could hear it coming from, while the lieutenant would call in 155s, and they would just blow everything up.
Yeah.
And then we'd stop and listen, and if they were dumb enough to engage us again, then they blow up another section of the mountain. We were just hoping that we could pin them down long enough to have mortar rounds or the 155 artillery come in there and take care of it. It's very rarely that we dismounted and went in to try to clear anything. That was asking for too many casualties.
Yep.
And that the terrain that he experienced, he struggled with that for a while after he came home. It was hard to drive through a canyon. It was hard to be
Hiram, down in Hiram, above where you live. Some of those mountains, some of those top of those peaks just look like. I don't know if you ever saw the film Restrepo.
I did.
But when that opens up, that scene opens up at the beginning. They're taking fire. I know that point. That's a firing point that they fire from.
Hmm.
We've been in combat in that same spot, shot that same. They must have something really, some defense up there. The Taliban or whoever it is up there shooting at us. But I thought I'd been home for a few years. I thought, I could watch this movie. Nah, it was no good. I was on the floor sweating.
I'm so sorry, and unfortunately, it's way too common. I didn't have to deal with the mountains, but I watched Restrepo, and there are scenes in Restrepo that today still haunt me, where that team leader, who was the staff sergeant, who was their hero, got killed running up the side of one of those mountains after the enemy, and they just felt lost. Like, what do we do now? Like, you know, filming live, it was like horrific. I was just like, I could imagine myself being there, and yeah, what a terrible one.
It was bad, you know. And it's civil affairs. There was no real reason for us to be up actually in the Korengal. We had built a little medical center up there. The team before me had built that, a medical center, and I think we ended up blowing it up before we left because the enemy had come in and overrun it. So just get rid of it. So we were down in Michigan, though, quite a few times, in Hanukkah Miracle and these other bases that are down along the Pesh River Valley, you know, down the bottom where everybody can just fire at you as much as they want. You hear the thunk up in the mountains, and you have to go running for cover.
You know, that always confused me too, Bob, is that all of our tactics and techniques that we've ever been taught in terms of strategy and combat environment told us to always have the high ground and always have the numbers on our side, 3-1, before we attack. And then I see these bases in Afghanistan down in the bottom, surrounded by 3,000 feet peaks, and how do you defend that?
They're able to take munitions from Vietnam and put them on target. We shouldn't have been able to do that. It's just, I don't know either. I'm not a strategist. I don't. I was just there to do what I was told, and I was told to run when I heard the thump. So that's what we did. And one day I was there with, you know, the Navy has some civil affairs also. Yeah. And we had from our own civil affairs, 405th Civil Affairs Battalion, we had a guy from the Navy who came in to fill a slot. And he had less combat experience than anybody. And one day I heard that thunk. We were just walking towards the gate down I think it was Hanukkah Miracle. And we heard that thunk, and I just grabbed him and said, we have got to run. And so we just ran over and found the first thing we could jump into. And he opened up the door, and it was the munitions storage area. And I was like, not a good place.
Not a good place.
But we didn't have time to make any other choice. So we just jumped in there as the base started taking rounds, and they started returning rounds. And the mortar crew came in to get more rounds. And he opened that mortar, he's probably a specialist, opened that door and saw us, and he just goes, you guys don't want to be in here. He grabs and took us someplace safer, but it was just wherever you could find to go to take cover. Yeah, it was, I mean, a lot of people were there in that situation. I don't want to make it sound like I had anything worse than anyone else, because I didn't. I was just one of the people who were there.
Well, you know what? We don't make comparisons on this channel. I've had people who were on a ship way out in the middle of safety, and they had their own challenges and things that they had to go through. So no need to make that statement, no comparisons here. But what I want to emphasize is trauma is trauma. It doesn't matter how it takes place, where it is. I've interviewed people who are not military or first responders on this channel who have suffered child abuse. You know, trauma is trauma, and it all comes at us from different angles. The area I want to talk about now is the recovery piece that happens after we get back. So in that combat environment where our fight and flight is always engaged, and we laugh about taking having a rocket hit close to you guys, and you guys like, what do we do? And we run back. Like, we almost engage a comic, a sense of humor. Like, oh, that was so silly. We didn't know what to do. The reality is we're facing some danger, and it's not something we're accustomed to yet before we get battle hardened. And battle hardened for me didn't really end up being good, because I had a hard time turning it off.
Yeah. I had a sniper take a shot at me, and it hit the glass in front of the turret. In front of that glass, there was a little piece of plastic. They had some plastic, and then that bulletproof glass. Plastic, but there's a shield to prevent, I think, mostly from kids who would throw rocks at us. But that round hit there about 3 feet out in front of me. I felt this anger. When I saw it, I felt this anger go through my body. And that never was turned off for a long time. And I want to say it's off, but I don't always know that that's off. I don't know that doesn't come up sometimes. that's what I mean. It can just creep up, and I'll let Haley tell you her story of healing, because really Haley being able to know what it's like to come home really helped me a lot. To have a spouse who understood why I was so weird. But,
I don't know what you want, is my story of healing or how we healed as a couple and dealing with a spouse that's healing, because there's a lot to that too.
Start someplace and keep going. Yeah, I mean, this is your story.
Yeah, when I got home, he joined, and we were headed to Bragg for his language training for 8 months, and this was shortly after I just been home from deployment. And
what year was that? That was 2005 or 6?
2000. By then it was probably
in 6.
Yeah, I'd gone through basic training and then AIT, and then into language school. So
yeah, because I didn't join the Bragg side of things until 2010, I think. That's when I started over there.
Actually, it might have been 06, 07, because I was pregnant with our first when we left. So anyway, but we went out. We got a little trailer, a little single wide, rented it in the middle of a cotton field.
Mm-hmm.
Us two and our German Shepherd. And just, I think having that 8 months separated from everybody and everything, we were out, had to rely on each other. We had to kind of get to know each other again.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was really instrumental and really helpful. And I took a job on orders with an OH-58 unit up in Raleigh. But every day I would come home, or every morning before I leave, I don't remember when it was, probably every day when I get home, I'd take that German Shepherd out just by myself and go walk just the little rivers for a couple hours every day, all by myself in silence. And that just having that helped a ton. That was a really healing period just for me. Anyway, but yeah, it's a different story dealing with.
Well, should be modest about that. That dog was a very intelligent dog, and it came from a kennel where he had spent most of his life just in the kennel. So this dog went from being a vicious German Shepherd. The first time I met it, I thought, we're not keeping this dog. It's going to kill me. So this dog went from being a dog that I was like, we're not going to keep, to the best dog we ever had. And that dog healed the same time that she did.
Yeah.
She's underscoring how much that working with the animals just helped her.
It really did. So then I spent the next 15 years building a training program because of that, and build a dog training program I've sold it now, but it's still thriving to this day. Anyway, but we lost that dog shortly after we came home from that, and that was really, really hard for me. And I'm not the type of person that really attaches deeply to animals. I really enjoy quite a lot. I mean, obviously I'm a professional trainer, but I grieved a lot over her, and I think it's because of that healing.
Yeah, I truly believe that animals can sense what we're feeling, and they can also absorb some of our pain. And it's not unlike massage therapists who puts their hands on your back. If they're not careful, they'll absorb your energy or your pain or your suffering too through their hands. Like it's pretty amazing. But I'm so glad that God sent you an animal that in a normal person's eyes was imperfect, but was what you needed to find your own way of healing.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So when I got home, I thought I was actually doing pretty good.
We all do.
I know, we all do. And and my brother and I are business partners, and he came up to me one day at work and told me some things that I was doing that I wasn't aware that I was doing at all. And like to this day, I don't remember doing some of these things he's telling me that I was doing. And I started actually taking a look at myself, and I had read, I guess right around this time, I read To Hell and Back by Audie Murphy. And he has a line in that book where he's home from World War II, and he is doing the movies. And one of the directors or someone was asking, are you ready? Are you up for this? Are you ready to go film this war scene or whatever? And he had a realistic moment with himself and said, I don't get up for anything anymore. There's no adrenaline for anything anymore. And he was going through his own battles in his mind. And I realized I was doing the exact same thing. I don't get excited about anything. I don't want to go do anything. I go do what I'm supposed to do. And I play the role of a human being as a father, but it's not because I want to. It's because that's what a soldier does. You do what you're expected to do. And so I started realizing I was going through my own depression, and she was just patient as can be with everything. And we did I can't remember what it's called for the 2-week training that the reservists do in the summertime. We did a hand-to-hand combat.
Combatives. Yeah.
Combatives. Thank you. And I was horrible. I was horribly out of shape because I'm a reservist, right? And I was really getting my butt kicked in that class bad. And I just had a realization in there that you can go back to combat, and these emotions that you're feeling, they're going to come back. And I had a freak out at drill. And we were in the barracks there at night, and I couldn't sleep. And I got up, went out, got in my truck, and I left. That's like, you don't do that, especially as a staff sergeant. You don't do that. Not telling anyone you're going. Well, when I left, I was heading for the VA because I knew I wasn't doing that. I had to go talk to somebody. But I wasn't in my right mind because it was the middle of the night. Nothing's open at the VA in the middle of the night. Nothing's open there most of the time anyways.
Right.
But nothing's open in the middle of the night for sure. And so I got there, the parking lot, and realized how dumb I was, and called a few people on the phone. And that's really where it starts, is who you decide to call and talk to. So I could call and talk to my wife. I talked to her that night because she understands that I'm not crazy, I'm just going through a hard time. And I can talk to my brother, and I can talk to Adam, who you had on your show before, and I can talk to my team sergeant Greenwood. And really, my team sergeant Greenwood is who I talk to when I'm in worse shape. When something's really got me. Call him, talk to him for about 30 minutes, and then we're okay, ready to go again. But came home from that. I went back to drill the next day and talked to my commanders and things, and told them everything, and they were very good with me, worked with me very well. But that's when I decided I'm done. I'm going to get out, even though I had one more deployment to do, and I could have had my retirement. I just thought, I also hurt my back, and so I was, just trying to be done. It was sometime around then, a religious leader in the community asked me to give a talk in our religious service on Easter. And when I was preparing this talk to give to the congregation, and I'd been working on healing and things, when I started learning about Jesus Christ, when I started thinking about him and learning about him, I felt something switch in my brain. The same way that I felt it switch when that sniper round hit, I felt it do something opposite to that. I felt something physically change. And since that time, I've been so much better. And whether people get that from Jesus Christ, or they look for it in other places, God will heal us. He's put things on this planet to heal us. We're not meant to kill each other. We're not designed to do it. It messes us up. And so he has ways for us to be able to heal and get better. And mine was and is a faith in Jesus Christ. I know there's other things that are helping people a lot. I know there's some new mushroom things that they're doing. There's having some good results. I don't think it's even legal in the States right now. I think they're having to go to Canada to do it.
Or Mexico, yeah.
And that's helping people. It's even helping people get off alcohol.
Yep.
Different problems. And anything that you can do that can help, and I'm all for it. I'm all for these guys. I don't think we should have to go and experience some terror and come home and relive that all over and over and over and over again. So everything that helps. I mean, there is something said to just getting up and going and doing, and we need help. And it's calling those people who you know can help you, and reaching out. And I really think having a spouse who knew what was going on, was very patient with me, and she just sit and listen to me talk about things. There's probably stories I've told her that I'm done telling. I don't tell them anymore. And I try to move on because that's not who I am. Mm-hmm. That's the role I played for a while. So.
Yeah, you've said so many good things, Bob and Haley, that resonate so powerfully with me. One is when we talk healing, every one of us, and I've met some of the toughest dudes in the world, Navy SEALs, right, who did almost 20 years as a career of doing hard things. They can put on a persona, but you're right, we become damaged, and damaged mentally. So you mentioned your back, and anybody who's ever worn a ruck or run in boots, it's not built to sustain your body. And I'm so glad that you found, and I talk about different levers all the time on the channel, and I talk about fitness, I talk about nutrition, and I do that mostly because those were two elements that really helped me mentally cope in positive ways versus turning to alcohol, drugs, porn, whatever else people cope with in a negative sense. And then I talk like spirituality as one of those levers, and that became one of the most powerful levers for me to heal. And I say to heal as if I'm healed now. I'm not. I'm on the journey to being healed still today. But the other lever would be like serving in your community. You talk about being asked to speak in your congregation and serving. And that to me becomes a sign of a person who's put the work in to make progress. That's a later on stage in the journey that says, yeah, I'm doing better, right? We can make those little gauges. And I would add, secondly, the testimony of the both of you, of your experiences and your healing journey, is going out to a global audience. I think today I have 77,000 subscribers globally, mostly international, who will tune in and hear your message of hope. And it will kickstart somebody's recovery journey just from this today, which is, to me, was just the most powerful thing.
If this will come to an end in the Ukraine, there's going to be a lot of need. There are a lot of, and Russia.
Yes.
There is a lot of hurt that's happened there. A lot of people, they'll come home, and my heart just goes out to those guys. Both sides, no matter what I feel about the conflict, both sides goes out to those guys on the ground who are, and you got to find a way to heal. You have to keep moving forward. You have to have some moments where you can just tell yourself, I have self-worth. I am important. What happened? I did what I needed to do it. I saw things that happened, but that's not happening right now, and I've got to do whatever it is, nutrition, religion, loved ones, friends. It doesn't matter. Yeah. You have to just keep moving forward until you find the thing that starts your healing. And then you're right. It's just, I can't say that I'm completely healed, because there's things that will just, I'll see a car accident,
yep.
And I'll see someone covered up with a sheet,
yep.
And it will flip me out,
yep.
And so you have to just go back to some point and start over again and just keep going. And every time you go a little further and a little further, and every time you talk about some of the horrific events that have happened, it takes a little bit of the sting out of it. Kind of.
Yeah.
It'll still catch you.
It will.
But yeah, I really appreciate it. It's a good time in the world to have your channel, to have your message go out of healing. Yeah, I really appreciate what you're doing.
And can I speak to the spousal relationship?
Yes, please.
And a little bit. Something that I think doesn't get talked about a lot that spouses need to understand is when somebody's been on, especially a combat deployment, you've kind of held yourself together for the whole year and a half, whatever, that they're gone. And when they get home, you're just so happy to have them home. And you think, okay, he's here now. He's available for me now. But you need to understand that he's going to be physically there, but emotionally, he is living in a fortress for a while and built some walls for a while. And he's going to be emotionally unavailable for a while. And that's hard, as a spouse, especially the male-female dynamic, because speaking to women, we need to connect emotionally first before we open up physically. And men are, I think, kind of opposite a little bit, that when you connect physically, you need that for your healing to be able to open up emotionally. And it's a really tall order to participate in the physical and help the healing that way. And the emotional is still largely closed off, and it could be for years.
Yep.
And that's really hard, but it's not any harder than what they had to do, obviously, being in battle. But I don't think people anticipate that. So if you understand that and understand that you may for a while have to have your emotional needs met through community, through your children, through family, through some other ways. Not that you can't connect emotionally, you will, obviously, but there's going to be limitations for a time. They're just not well for a while. Anyway, just don't give up. Just be patient and be there as the healing takes place for both of you.
Haley, you touched on something that's so important, and you're right, we haven't mentioned it on the channel much, but there is a disconnect that happens when a person deploys to a combat environment. One of the things I've mentioned previously is that there's no touch, really. I might give a guy a slap on a shoulder or something, but it's not like I'm embracing people while I'm deployed. So I'm living in an environment where I'm really not touching, and especially when I'm going out on patrols, I really don't want to be touched. And so then I come from that environment and I have 4 days in transition to get home, and suddenly my kids, my wife, they want to touch me. Freak no.
A few times I'd be up with my kids as they were calling on me, and I was like, "Get off of me!" And I watched the hurt in their face. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I can't do that."
We've all done it. We've all done it. There came a point in my struggles where I started to hear things that weren't there. I thought I heard my daughter scream, and I immediately thought I was back in country. Somebody was taking a child. I kicked open my front door with an M4, ready to shoot what was ever out there. And it was just pitch black in a street, like there was nothing. But I was still so spun up that I couldn't see what was real and what wasn't for a long time. You talk about emotional disconnect. I was disconnected for years. And it's terrible because my kids paid the price of a dad who didn't want to listen, didn't want to be there, didn't want to touch. And it's been a hard journey to come back from that because I have 6 kids. And it's been a hard journey. I recently sat my oldest 3 down and told him some of my experiences. And it wasn't a fun experience to tell them those things. Not that I was trying to make an excuse for my behavior, but I want them to know why I was behaving in a way that I still was learning how to control. And my wife has said so many times that we've got to be openly communicating. And if I act out like sounds of a firework for years destroyed me, I have to own that, and I have to tell my kids, hey, Dad can't handle this right now because I was in a scenario where those explosives were very close and it did hurt people. And so it's hard for me to separate what's that and what's there. And, but you know, the good news is, and you know, I'll get emotional on this channel when I talk through some things, because that's part of my healing still today. It's not just interviewing you guys, hearing your story and walking away. It's absorbing it. It's feeling in the moment when you talk about your experiences, because they're real. And you know, whether a person served in the military, there are so many people globally who can relate to what you both have shared today. And you mentioned, you know, the conflict in Russia and Ukraine. And when I started this channel and I called it United Veterans Worldwide, it was because I knew that global veterans don't have the same benefits we do in the United States, or resources, or they don't talk about things. But I know they're still dealing with the same struggles that we have today. And I want to make all of our voices together, send it out into the world so that people know there is hope and they're not alone in what they're going through. Well, you guys have been incredible. I've taken up so much of your time. What the audience doesn't know is I had so many technical difficulties today that just stressed me out. Couldn't get this working for a long time, and I delayed, and so I've pushed you guys' schedule back. But you guys have been so gracious today to stay with me and not quit, and I appreciate your time. Any last words you want to say before we finish the interview today?
No, just thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, you guys have been great.
A lot of guys still hurting, so thank you.
Yeah.